Hello, bruvs. We're back with the After Midnight Ghost Book, a 1981 compilation from Franklin Watts. Let's get on with this. I believe this is the 18th story in the book. Reflections by Janice Elliott. All right, let's do this. Reflections. The new waiter? Yes. I have the impression he wears a wig. And yet it is white. That is nothing to me, says the proprietor. He is efficient. He is working his way up. Also, he rubs his upper lip as though he were missing a mustache. The restaurant on the Avenida is, as it has ever been, the sober-sided refuge of the middle classes who prefer things to be as they have ever been, and there is nothing wrong with that. All around there is change and mostly decay. What with the junkies and the muggers and the takeaway Chinese, but the moment you close the door of the restaurant behind you and walk through the bead curtain, what solace there is in the brown and muted decency. New paper tablecloths every morning. On each table, the martini ashtray. A single carnation that wilts through the week from Saturday to Friday, and the carafe of water, though most clients prefer mineral water or the light fizzy beer of the country. There is little demand for wine. The local white is oversweet, and the red rusty to the teeth. The copper or some other mineral in the soil, one says, enters the vine from the root. The French does not travel well, or having traveled sickens. Besides, one would wake from one's siesta with vigorous or vinous gravel in the mouth or rage in the head. There is work to be done. Now more than ever, work must be seen to be done. There has always been the electric fan. The walls have always been brown. The mirrors reflect everything that goes on in the restaurant on the Avenida. A famous poet came here once, and he was reflected also his harlot. No dogs are allowed, and therefore they are not reflected. Though there is the old actress who brings her cat and feeds it raw biftek on a fondue fork. She was once a belle, and in those days, when she came in for an after-theater supper, the mirrors reflected her beauty, but they do not remember it. Mirrors are unforgiving. Why does this feel so dark? There is a writer, also, everyone respects and no one reads myself, but he dresses like a doctor or a solicitor to confuse the mirrors. A painter comes here, too. A lemony fellow who draws murderously on the paper tablecloths. But neither the actress nor the writer nor the painter is representative of the clientele, who are solid accountants and store owners, or managers and dentists and actuaries and civil servants. Their reflections are irreproachable. In the middle of the day, they wag their heads over the newspapers. In the evening, many call in for a beer or a fine at the stainless steel bar with the cappuccino machine, and on Friday, they buy a lottery ticket. Sometimes they bring their wives and families here for dinner, hardly ever their mistresses, because of the reflections. There is a recess across which curtains may be drawn for private parties, but mostly it is the staff who eat here. About 3 o'clock and also at midnight. Gruber's feet do not seem too good, but as the proprietor says, he will rise. At first, he never had much to say, but he is the hardest worker I have ever seen. By 7 in the morning, he is sweeping out the restaurant, and he is still there at midnight. Where he sleeps is a wonder. He might be the loneliest man I have ever seen. Gruber looks a little like Chaplin in his last years, but more vigorous. He wears a white jacket, black trousers, a little black tie, and he takes particular pleasure in polishing the mirrors. He works away with leather and vinegar water like a window cleaner. You might almost believe there was a view beyond to be revealed. Thus, one day at 3:40, the restaurant on the Avenida is empty, but for Gruber, who wrings out his leather and vinegar for the last time and brings me a fine on a tray in a glass, on a paper mat, on a saucer. You work very hard, Gruber. Yourself? Thank you, sir. A beer. If you will join me, you are rising, Gruber. I believe so, sir. My stepbrother was in the same trade, but he did not rise. You can imagine my age, sir. I am 89. 89 is a great age for anyone, and for a waiter working his way up, it is miraculous. For most people, for the majority. The majority represents not only ignorance, but cowardice. The majority can never replace the man. Indeed, rubbing his upper lip in the familiar gesture, Gruber appears to weigh me. For the first time, I notice his extraordinary, piercing eyes, normally lowered as he goes about his duties. Satisfied, he speaks confidentially. His voice is a little harsh. He has an air of authority, and I guess this is not the first time in his life he has been on the rise. I wonder if he has been a schoolmaster or even a captain of industry. One does not ask Gruber such questions. As he talks, he rearranges the table to his satisfaction. The salt cellar is apparently a little out of line. The water carafe must be centered exactly so. This place, for instance, is anarchic. I intend to initiate some reforms. You are startled, sir. I can see that. But my propositions will be acceptable to the proprietor. I have persuaded him that the kitchen staff, not to mention those who wait upon table, will welcome a firm hand. The psyche of the broad masses is accessible only to what is strong and uncompromising. That has been my experience. You have considerable experience of catering, Mr. Gruber. Not of catering, sir, but of human nature, yes. Yes, indeed. There we go. I did turn it off. Thank you, sir. A beer. If you will join me, you are rising, Gruber. I believe so. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah. But of human nature, yes, was his last statement. After this first interview, Gruber and I have many such chats. This appears to be his only weakness, the need for a confidant. In fact, it is he who tends to initiate the conversations, and I realize, set the subject. I am amazed by the old waiter's grasp of politics, history, music, art, architecture. The proprietor falls ill and gives Gruber leave to carry through his program of reforms. The service improves. The food no longer arrives tepid at the table. Gruber no longer sweeps out in the morning or washes the mirrors. He has underlings to do this now. There is a spring in his step. He looks younger. He snaps his fingers for service and begins to spend more time with the customers. With the staff, he becomes positively tyrannical and overbearing his way with a sloppy cook, a waiter whose paper cuffs are not fresh that morning. The fish chef who has been caught spitting in the Boulabase, I don't know how to say that, and sacked without notice. I asked Gruber how it is that he appears to inspire and retain unusual loyalty. What I mean is, and I think he understands, the serving classes will not put up nowadays with autocracy. Then he says with a smile almost sly, they may go elsewhere for a job, but there are no jobs to be had. Exactly. Another time, you're a monster, Gruber. You're working them to death. The masses are scarcely conscious of the fact that their freedom as human beings is abused. They feel very little shame at being terrorized intellectually. You would agree these are bad times. Who could deny that? I have history on my side. They will do as they are told, and my customers, have you heard any complaints that the omelets are light and the plates are hot? The proprietor dies. Gruber takes over the restaurant. He puts on weight, and it turns out that he is not, after all, alone in the world. At 3:30, or at midnight, he dines with a crony in the staff recess. We do not have so many talks nowadays. It is autumn, then it is winter. The leaves fall from the trees in the Avenida. Awnings are taken in, and pavement tables, and cold woof of a wind blows from the Sierra. The old actress dies and will never more be reflected. Her little cat is found in the alley behind the restaurant, its neck broken. I do not sleep so well, and at midnight wrap up, push my flask into my pocket, and pace the Retiro Park and the Avenida. I think of flying out, but there are hijackings almost every day and a strike at the airport. Broken up by the militia, but there is still no one to fly the planes. And then the militia strike. There are riots, pointless when there is no militia to put them down. This is a bad season for everyone but Gruber, who flourishes. He buys up the restaurant across the Avenida, then a couple more in the city. I hear that these deals are not altogether straight, that Gruber has brought pressure to bear, that he has connections with some organization that is not entirely legal. Though who it to say nowadays what is and is not legal. Gruber puts up his prices. Some of the old customers disappear. One day they are there, the next they are not. The painter, I notice, has been moved from his corner table to the one by the serving door, and he no longer draws on the tablecloths. I still retain my place by grace, perhaps, of the many interesting chats I have had with Gruber on all kinds of subjects, and so he can still see when the curtain is not drawn the recess where the staff used to eat about 3 o'clock and midnight. Reflected in a mirror on the opposite wall, but the staff no longer eat there. Instead, Gruber holds court for an increasing number of intimates. I had no idea he had so many friends in this city. For those cronies, nothing apparently is too good. Fantastical ice creams, the whole roast head of a pig, lobster out of season, wines imported by air, black market, Cuban cigars, oysters, ortolan. Well, Gruber deserves it. He has risen. He still spares a little time for me for the sake of the good talks. For the sake of the good talks we have had. In spite of the company he keeps, the servant turned master still strikes me as a lonely soul. I am a self-educated man, he says. This is not the first time I have risen, but I must tell you, my friend, at my age it becomes tiring to work one's way up. You're healthier than I am, Gruber. Ah, that cough. Might I prescribe rum and lemon with a little honey? Gruber is right about the cough. For a few weeks I am away from the restaurant, then resume my insomniac night walks, though I am probably not fit to go out. A slight fever keeps me warm. I sit in the park, then around the middle of the night find myself shivering in the Avenida. I take my accustomed table in the empty restaurant and, waiting for the barman to bring me a cafe filtre and a cognac, I look up and see reflected in the mirror, dining in the recess, a jolly party. Adolf Hitler, Goebbels, Bormann, Goering, Himmler, the six Goebbels children, Hela, Hilda, Helmut, Hold, Hedda, and Heidi, who would be in bed by now, and Adolf's dog, the great Alsatian Blondie. Blondie? The first dog ever to be reflected in the restaurant on the Avenida. It's bitter out. There is snow in the wind. Nearly Christmas. The conifers on the Sierra will have had their first frosting, and the air will be very clear and bright. I gulp my cognac and run home. Of course, it is absurd, some waking dream or hallucination. Still, I keep away from the restaurant in the Avenida, nurse my cough, and take my exercise in the Retiro Park. Even in winter, it is a pleasant place. A few nurses still bring their charges here to play. There are the pink stocking flamingos on the lake, and cheerful ducks. I carry bread for the ducks and nuts for the squirrels. One afternoon, just before Christmas, I find the gaunt painter from the restaurant in the Avenida sketching the Retiro flamingos. He's a dry fellow with whom, in all the years at the restaurant, I have never exchanged more than a nod. But, on an impulse, I take a place next to him on the bench. We sit in silence for a while. Tell me, how are our friends in the Avenida? I no longer go there. It is not a happy place, except, of course, for Gruber and his pals. He explains. From his table by the serving door, he overheard the so correct Gruber shouting at the kitchen staff. Prices went up, the quality of the food went down. As for himself, it was made clear that he was no longer welcome. First the table by the serving door, then a dirty tablecloth, a cockroach in his soup. Finally, he was told that no table was available, even by the serving door. The next day we meet again. We take a cafe cognac at the small bar in the Retiro Park. Standing at the counter, my new friend, etiolated, could be a flamingo himself, roosting on one leg. He wears mittens to sketch outdoors in winter. He tells me there are rumors that Gruber is running a protection racket. He also tells me that for many years, when they were together, he was the lover of the actress with the cat. Though she had no cat then. Extraordinary, these unlooked-for connections one discovers by chance, like secret passages in a house. He talks of painting, I of books. I wonder, did you ever read a story by Isaac Bashevis Singer or someone about seeing Hitler and his buddies dining in a New York restaurant? No, I never read that story. A few days later, sitting on our bench on a raw gray afternoon, I think again of the conifers on the Sierra, of decorated trees and childhood. What will you be doing for Christmas? My friend snaps his sketchbook shut. His coat, I think, though once good, is too thin for this weather. I do not regard Christmas. I am a Jew. Previously alien in this Catholic Southern Hemisphere, Santa has somehow got a work permit and drives his sleigh down the Avenida, chuckling, ho, ho, ho. Some desperation has seized the city, and in these bad times, he has more customers than the Virgin or her sweetly scented creche in the porch of the cathedral. The shops are brilliant. Everyone throws their money away like dirt, which it nearly is. This is old Klaus's Christmas, and he rides through the town like Bacchus, frightening children. There are drunks around Christmas Eve, with the crowd still in the streets at 11, and the electronic Christmas peal of bells from Flores, the big store on the Avenida. There is an air of terrible carnival. There is a fireman's strike, and at midnight, the restaurant on the Avenida is burned to the ground. Someone with a grudge, maybe that fish chef who was sacked for spitting in the bouillabaisse, the bouillabaisse. I don't know how to say it. It must have been someone with inside knowledge to pick a time when only Gruber would be there with his friends. No one survives. The militia break in with axes and shatter all the mirrors. Everyone. Spring in the retiro, a light gauze, soft air, children with balloons and pets, nurses in tow. The local currency, too, is buoyant again, and at the retiro bar, old belles gossip over their cream pastries. There is a new restaurant in the Avenida, but I prefer to share my lunch with the ducks and drowse and hear the nurses call. A big dog nearly topples me and is called off by one of the children. I don't mind. I like dogs. What's his name? Blondie. And I hear the nurses call after the children. Hila, come here. Hila, helmet, hold, Ada, ID. What an awful story that was. Awful little story. Well, we got one more day of this book, and then it's on to November.